The observatory dome hummed quietly as Director Taeho Kim studied the unusual readings on his screen. His fingers traced the path of an object moving through the outer reaches of the solar system. After working for 40 years at the Global Space Monitoring Center, he had never seen anything like this. Director Kim called Jaewoo Park as she entered the room. She was his chief analyst, known for her calm even in crisis. The lunar outpost has confirmed it. The object is definitely artificial and moving toward us. Taeho nodded slowly. Humanity had lived in peace for 3,000 years. After nearly destroying themselves in the final war, people had rebuilt their world and their societies. Earth had become a garden planet again, with gleaming cities that worked with nature instead of against it. "Have you told anyone else?" he asked. "Only the immediate team," replied Jaewoo. "Should I inform the World Council?" Taeho looked out the window at the bright blue sky. Humans had spread throughout the solar system in their 3 millennia of peace. They had built homes on Mars, mined the asteroids, and established research stations on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Recently, the first brave explorers had even traveled to nearby stars. But never, in all that time, had they found signs of other intelligent life. Until today. "Yes," said Taeho. "Contact Chairwoman Haeun Lee immediately. First contact protocols are now in effect." Within hours, the World Council gathered in the ancient hall in New Seoul. Representatives from Earth and all off-planet colonies joined either in person or by hologram. Haeun Lee, who had led the council for 12 years, stood at the center. "For 3,000 years," she began, "we have looked to the stars and wondered if we were alone. Today, we have our answer." The hall fell silent as she displayed the images and data from the observatory. The object was clearly a ship of some kind, moving with purpose toward Earth. "Our ancestors dreamed of this moment," Haeun continued. "They also feared it. But we are not our ancestors. We have learned from their mistakes." Sun Wukong, the Mars colony representative, spoke up. "Have they responded to our greeting messages?" "Not yet," answered Taeho. "But they have adjusted their course twice in ways that suggest they are aware of us. They will reach Earth orbit in 7 days." The council talked for hours about how to prepare. Unlike in old stories, there was no panic, no calls for weapons or defenses. 3,000 years of peace had changed humanity deeply. "We will welcome them as friends until they prove otherwise," declared Haeun. "Prepare the orbital meeting station. Select representatives from all human settlements. Show them humanity at its best." As the meeting ended, Jaewoo approached Taeho. "Do you ever wonder what they want?" she asked quietly. Taeho smiled. "Every civilization must have its own reasons for reaching out to the stars. Ours was curiosity and a desire to grow. Perhaps theirs is the same." In the days that followed, humans everywhere watched the skies. Children in schools drew pictures of what they thought the aliens might look like. Scientists prepared questions they hoped to ask. Artists created music and paintings as gifts. On the 6th day, the alien ship sent its first message, a simple series of mathematical equations, the universal language. Earth responded in kind, adding images of humans with open hands, the ancient symbol of peaceful greeting. That evening, Taeho stood in his garden with his grandson, Minjun. "Are you afraid of the aliens, grandfather?" the boy asked. Taeho looked up at the stars. "No, Minjun." "Do you know why?" The boy shook his head. "Because peace isn't just the absence of war. True peace comes from strength, not the strength to harm others, but the strength to understand them. For 3,000 years, we have built that strength. But what if they want to hurt us?" Minjun persisted. Taeho placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. "Then we will show them a better way, just as we showed ourselves a better way all those centuries ago." The next morning, the alien ship entered Earth orbit. It was angular and dark, unlike the smooth ships humans built. As it settled into position, a message came through on all channels. "We are the Zorathi," it began. "We have watched your world for centuries. We expected to find ruins. Instead, we find you thriving. This requires explanation. Prepare to be tested. In the observatory, Taeho and Jaiwoo exchanged glances. The message sounded like a challenge, perhaps even a threat. But neither felt afraid. Send the welcome message as planned, Taeho instructed. And inform Chairwoman Lee that our visitors have arrived. As humanity prepared to meet the Zarathi, they did so with a calm confidence born from 3 millennia of hard-earned wisdom. Whatever these aliens intended, humanity would face it together, with open minds and ready smiles. The Zarathi ship hung in Earth orbit like a dark crystal, its sharp edges catching the sunlight as it turned. Commander Do-hyun Choi watched it from the observation deck of Harmony Station, Earth's largest orbital platform. After 20 years in the Orbital Defense Corps, he had never expected to be among the first humans to meet aliens. "Commander, they're requesting permission to send a shuttle," said Communications Officer Mina Kong. Her voice was steady, but her fingers tapped nervously against her console. "Permission granted," Do-hyun replied. "Direct them to Docking Bay 3. The station had been cleared of all non-essential personnel. Only Do-hyun's team and the 5 representatives chosen by the World Council remained. They waited in the meeting chamber, a circular room with walls of transparent aluminum that offered a stunning view of Earth below. The Zarathi shuttle approached with precision, its movements suggesting advanced technology and expert control. It locked onto the station with a soft thud that vibrated through the deck plates. "They've docked," reported Security Chief Jianbei. "Air pressure is stable." Do-hyun straightened his blue uniform. "Open the airlock." The inner door slid open, revealing 3 figures. They stood taller than humans, with bodies covered in overlapping plates that resembled armor but were clearly part of their biology. Each had 4 arms and moved with a fluid grace that contradicted their rigid appearance. Their heads featured multiple eyes arranged in clusters and breathing vents where a human nose would be. The central figure stepped forward. "I am Envoy Croter of the Zarathi Imperium," it announced through a translation device at its throat. Its voice had a clicking quality that the translator couldn't fully smooth out. "We come to evaluate." Chairwoman Haeun Lee stepped forward with a calm smile. "I am Haeun Lee of the World Council. Earth welcomes you." The aliens' eye clusters shifted and contracted, studying the humans with obvious curiosity. "Your welcome is noted," replied Croter. "But misplaced. We are not here as friends or explorers." A tense silence fell over the room. Do-hyun noticed the other 2 aliens moving their upper limbs in what might be a defensive posture. "Then what brings you to our system?" asked Haeun, her smile unchanged. "Assessment," clicked Croter. "For the past 500 years, we have monitored your transmissions. Your early history suggested your species would destroy itself through war or environmental collapse. We expected to find ruins or, at most, struggling survivors. Instead, we find you thriving and expanding. This requires explanation." Historian Jisoo Kwon stepped forward. "We nearly did destroy ourselves, 3,000 years ago in what we call the Final War. But we survived and learned from that near extinction." The aliens' eye clusters pulsed. "Learning is claimed by many species. Proof is demanded by the Imperium." Do-hyun exchanged glances with Security Chief Jian. Something in the alien's tone suggested threat. "We would be happy to share our history and achievements," offered Haeun. "Words are insufficient," Croter replied. "According to our traditions, we must issue a formal challenge to determine if your species is worthy of recognition or requires guidance." The temperature in the room seemed to drop by several degrees. "What kind of challenge?" asked Do-hyun, speaking for the first time. All 3 aliens turned their attention to him, their bodies shifting in perfect unison. 3 trials, explained Croter. Strength, intelligence, and resolve. The foundational virtues by which all advanced species must be measured. "And if we refuse?" asked Jian. "Refusal is submission," clicked the alien. "Your colonies would be placed under Imperium protection. Your development would be directed." Do-hyun noticed that despite this veiled threat, none of the human representatives showed fear. 3,000 years of peace had not made humanity weak, it had made them confident in who they were. Heiyun stepped forward again. We accept your challenge, Envoy Croter. Not because we fear submission, but because we welcome the opportunity to show you who we have become. The alien's reaction was subtle, a slight shift in posture, a quick pulsing of eye clusters. Dohyan suspected their calm acceptance was not what the Zarathi had expected. The trials will begin tomorrow, announced Croter. We will test a representative of your species in each category. As the aliens turned to leave, one of them paused and addressed Heiyun directly. Your response is unusual. Most species react with either aggression or fear. Heiyun smiled again, genuine warmth in her expression. Perhaps that is why they required guidance. After the aliens returned to their shuttle, the human team gathered to plan. The Zarathi clearly expected to find humanity wanting, perhaps even hoping for it. They don't understand us, said Jisoo. They've been watching our history, but they missed the most important part, how we changed. Dohyan looked out at the alien ship, dark against the stars. Then we'll have to show them, he said. As the Zarathi shuttle detached and returned to its mothership, Mina approached Dohyan. Commander, should we be worried? They seem hostile. Dohyan shook his head. Not hostile, just certain of their superiority. Our ancestors were the same, once. And now, asked Mina. Now we know better, replied Dohyan. Tomorrow, we'll begin teaching them what 3,000 years of peace has taught us. The red Martian landscape stretched out beneath a dome of transparent material stronger than steel. Inside, humans and Zarathi gathered for the first trial. The aliens had chosen Mars as neutral ground, not quite Earth, but still within humanity's domain. Juno Bay checked the neural interface at his wrist one last time. As Earth's representative for the trial of strength, he felt calm despite the importance of his task. Years as a construction engineer in the heavy gravity of Jupiter's moons had prepared his body well, even if he looked small compared to the Zarathi champion. The trial of strength will now begin, announced Croter. Each contestant will attempt the same tasks. Judge fairly, observe carefully. The Zarathi champion stepped forward. Standing nearly 3 meters tall with a natural armor exoskeleton, it made Juno look like a child in comparison. The alien moved to the first challenge, a series of stone columns weighing several tons each. With visible effort but impressive power, it lifted and rearranged them according to the pattern displayed on a floating screen. Impressive, murmured Heiyun Lee to Dohyan. Their natural strength exceeds ours. Physical strength was never our greatest asset, replied Dohyan quietly. When the Zarathi finished, it turned toward Juno with what seemed like smug confidence in its posture. Your turn, human. Juno stepped forward and touched his neural interface. Beneath his simple clothing, microscopic machines merged with his muscles and bones. Not replacing them, but working in perfect harmony with his natural body. This technology, refined over centuries, represented humanity's approach to advancement, balance rather than replacement. He approached the stone columns and began moving them with fluid grace. Though the effort showed on his face, he completed the task even faster than the Zarathi had. The alien observers clicked rapidly to each other in their own language. How? Demanded the Zarathi champion. Your species lacks the physical capacity for such feats. Juno smiled. We evolved beyond simply replacing our bodies with machines. Instead, we learned to create technology that works with our biology, not against it. The second challenge involved precision rather than raw power. Both contestants had to navigate an obstacle course while carrying fragile crystal spheres. The Zarathi, designed for power, broke 3 spheres. Juno, with his integrated technology allowing perfect control, broke none. The human has completed this challenge more effectively, admitted Croter, clearly surprised. Later that day, the intelligence trial began in an orbital facility above Mars. Somi Yoon, Earth's leading theoretical physicist, represented humanity. The challenge involved solving increasingly complex scientific problems with limited time and resources. The Zarathi scientist approached each problem methodically, applying formulas and principles with remarkable speed. But when faced with problems that had no established solution, it hesitated. Somi, however, tackled each challenge with creative approaches that sometimes seemed illogical at first but led to elegant solutions. When asked to design a theoretical energy transfer system, the Zorathi created a complex but conventional model. Somi designed something simpler but entirely new, based on principles the aliens had apparently never considered. Your approach lacks standard methodology, observed the Zorathi scientist. Standard methods solve standard problems, replied Somi. New challenges require new thinking. By the end of the intelligence trial, even Croter seemed disturbed by the results. The humans watched as the aliens conferred among themselves, their body language suggesting confusion and concern. That evening, Hayon requested a private meeting with Croter. They met in a garden section of the Mars base, where Earth plants grew in the artificial environment. You seem troubled by today's results, Hayon said. Your species performs, unexpectedly, admitted Croter. Our observations of your early history showed primitive creatures driven by emotion and violence. The transformation is difficult to explain. Hayon gestured to a small tree growing in Martian soil. This tree's ancestors evolved on Earth over millions of years. Yet in just a few generations, we helped it adapt to grow here. Evolution can be guided when there is sufficient reason. She handed Croter a data crystal. These are our historical records of the final war and what followed. The Great Reconciliation changed us fundamentally. When faced with extinction, we chose a different path. Croter's eye clusters focused on the crystal. We will review this information. Tomorrow is the final trial, resolve, said Hayon. Before it begins, I hope you understand what you're really testing. And what is that? Asked Croter. Not whether humanity deserves to exist, Hayon replied calmly, but whether our two species can learn from each other. As Croter departed with the data crystal, Dohayan approached Hayon. Do you think they'll understand? Hayon watched the alien return to its ship. They're intelligent beings. Understanding is always possible. And if they don't understand, asked Dohayan. Then we'll show them tomorrow, said Hayon. The greatest strength humans developed wasn't physical or even intellectual. What was it? Hayon smiled. The ability to face our deepest fears and still choose compassion. That's what the trial of resolve will reveal. The final trial chamber looked deceptively simple, a small room with two reclined chairs facing each other. Each chair had a complex neural interface helmet suspended above it. Between them stood a console covered in blinking lights. This was where the trial of resolve would take place. Jiho Ryu, Earth's foremost psychological specialist, entered the chamber with calm steps. He had spent 40 years studying the human mind and how it had evolved since the Great Reconciliation. Now, he would be the first human to connect directly with an alien consciousness. The trial of resolve tests the strength of spirit, explained Croter. In this simulation, both participants will face scenarios designed to break their will. These are not physical challenges but mental ones. The Zorathi mental warrior entered the chamber. Unlike the previous champions, this one was smaller, with a more complex pattern of plates covering its body. Its eye clusters moved constantly, analyzing everything. The simulation draws from the participants' own fears and memories, continued Croter. It creates personalized scenarios of increasing difficulty. Jiho nodded. I understand. Few species last beyond the third level, said the Zorathi warrior. I have mastered 7. Jiho simply smiled and took his seat. The neural interface lowered onto his head, and he closed his eyes. Both participants went still as the simulation began. On monitors outside the chamber, observers could see simplified representations of what they experienced. The first scenario placed them on a planet facing imminent destruction. The Zorathi responded with disciplined calm, organizing an evacuation. Jiho did the same, though his approach focused more on maintaining community bonds than strict efficiency. Both passed the first level, announced a Zorathi technician. The second scenario was more personal. Each participant faced the loss of loved ones. The Zorathi maintained its composure through obvious effort. Jiho actually shed tears but remained functional, working through his grief rather than suppressing it. Both passed the second level, came the announcement. As the trials progressed, the scenarios became increasingly disturbing. The fifth level simulated torture. The sixth, complete isolation. Throughout each test, the Zorathi displayed impressive mental discipline, blocking out pain and fear through sheer willpower. Jiho's approach was different. He didn't resist the emotions but experienced them fully while maintaining his center. He accepted fear, pain, and grief as part of existence without being overwhelmed by them. By the eighth level, a scenario involving watching one's entire civilization slowly collapse, the Zorathi mental warrior began showing signs of distress. Its body trembled. Its breathing became irregular. "Your champion is struggling," observed Heiyun. "Impossible," replied Crowder. "This warrior has the highest mental discipline rating in our fleet." Yet the monitors showed clear evidence of growing distress in the Zorathi participant while Jiho remained stable. At the 10th level, a simulation of complete existential meaninglessness that few minds could withstand, the Zorathi warrior finally broke. With a sharp cry, it tore off its neural interface and collapsed to the floor. Jiho continued for 2 more levels before the technicians ended the simulation. When he removed his helmet, his face was wet with tears, but his eyes were clear and peaceful. "How?" demanded the Zorathi warrior once it had recovered. "How did you withstand that?" "I didn't withstand it," Jiho replied gently. "I experienced it fully." Later, in a private meeting room, Jiho explained to the puzzled aliens. 3,000 years ago, humanity nearly destroyed itself. We faced our own darkness, our capacity for hatred, fear, and destruction. In the aftermath, we realized that pushing away negative emotions only makes them stronger. "You embraced weakness?" asked Crowder, confused. "We embraced wholeness," corrected Jiho. "True resolve isn't about being unaffected by pain or fear. It's about feeling everything and still making choices based on our deepest values." Heian added, "The Great Reconciliation taught us that strength comes from integration, not domination even within our own minds." Crowder's eye clusters shifted rapidly as it processed this information. This contradicts everything in Zorathi philosophy. We believe strength comes from control. And yet your champion broke when facing scenarios beyond control, noted Dohyan gently. That evening, the Zorathi requested time alone to discuss among themselves. The human delegation waited patiently, gathering in an observation lounge overlooking Mars. "Do you think they understand now?" asked Mina. "Understanding takes time," replied Jiho. "Their entire culture is built around hierarchy and control. We're showing them an alternative they never considered." Somi looked thoughtful. 3,000 years ago, we wouldn't have understood either. "That's the point," said Heiyun. "We smile not because we're naive, but because we recognize in their challenge the same fears that once drove us to conflict. We've been where they are." As the Martian sunset painted the dome in shades of orange and red, a message arrived from the Zorathi vessel. They requested a final meeting the next day. Not for another trial, but for a conversation. "They're ready to talk," said Dohyan, looking at the message. "Good," replied Heiyun with a smile. "Because we have much to share, and much to learn." That night, as humans and Zorathi rested under the same Martian sky, something had fundamentally changed between them. The trials were over, but the real journey was just beginning. The World Council chambers in New Seoul gleamed in the morning light. The great city, rebuilt after the final war, represented humanity's new path, towering structures that twisted like DNA strands, covered in living gardens that cleaned the air and housed thousands of bird and insect species. Below, citizens went about their day, aware but not afraid of the alien ship now visible in the blue sky above. Inside the council chambers, humans and Zorathi gathered for what both sides knew would be a historic meeting. The 5 alien representatives stood more relaxed than before, their rigid postures subtly softened. Crowder stepped forward. "According to our traditions, we must formally announce the results of the challenge." The alien paused, eye clusters shifting in what humans now recognized as a sign of deep thought. "Your species has completed all trials successfully. The Zorathi Imperium acknowledges humanity as equals." A quiet murmur of satisfaction passed through the human delegates, but no cheers or celebrations. 3,000 years of peace had taught them to receive such news with quiet dignity. "We are pleased," replied Heian, "but we hope for more than simple equality." Crowder's head tilted slightly. "Explain." Engineer Wu Jinbei approached with a small wooden box. He was elderly, one of the designers of the Mars terraforming project that had begun turning the red planet green over the past century. "For 3,000 years, Wu Jin said, we've been preparing not just for survival, but for this moment, meeting other intelligent life." He opened the box, revealing crystal data cubes that glowed with soft blue light. "These contain our history, science, art, philosophy, everything we've learned on our journey from violence to harmony." "A gift?" asked Crowder, sounding confused. "An invitation," corrected Wu Jin. "To partnership rather than competition." The Zarathi representatives conferred briefly in their clicking language before Crowder responded. "In our entire history, no species has ever passed all three trials. Those who failed in strength became labor worlds. Those who failed in intelligence became study subjects. Those who failed in resolve became no longer relevant." A heavy silence fell over the room as humans recognized what the alien was saying. The Zarathi had eliminated species that failed their tests. "And now?" asked Heian calmly. "Now we face something our traditions did not prepare us for," admitted Crowder. "A species that passed all trials, yet rejects the very premise of the challenge. You smile when challenged. You share freely with potential rivals. You embrace emotions our culture teaches us to suppress." Dohyan stepped forward. "Because we learned that the greatest strength isn't in dominating others, but in growing together." One of the other Zarathi, who had not spoken before, suddenly addressed the humans. "I am Vexner, lead scientist of the Imperium fleet. Your approach contradicts our evolutionary understanding. Species compete. The strong survive." Somi smiled. "That's just one model of evolution. Cooperation can be equally advantageous. Look at Earth's history. The most successful species were often those that developed symbiotic relationships. Our own bodies contain the descendants of different organisms that once competed but eventually combined to create something greater," added Jiho. Outside the windows, the sun reached its highest point, bathing the chamber in warm light that filtered through the living walls where plants grew in transparent tubes. "We have reviewed your historical records," said Crowder. "Your transformation after your final war is unprecedented in our experience." "Because we came so close to extinction," explained Heian. "We faced our own darkness and chose a different path." Crowder placed a clawed hand on the data crystals Wu Jin had offered. "The Imperium has existed for 12,000 years. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. Yet our civilization has remained essentially unchanged for millennia." "Perhaps that's why you sought us out," suggested Heian. "Not to test us, but because on some level, you sensed the possibility of change." The alien was silent for a long moment. Then, in a gesture that surprised everyone, Crowder opened a compartment in its armor and removed a similar crystal. "This contains star charts of systems beyond your current exploration range, including worlds where other intelligences dwell, some who failed our trials but might benefit from your approach." Heian accepted the crystal with a respectful bow. "Thank you. We came expecting to find savages or weaklings," Crowder admitted. "Instead, we found something our people have never truly understood: strength through openness rather than control." As the meeting concluded, plans were made for ongoing exchanges. A joint mission would venture to the nearest star system with signs of developing intelligence, not to judge, but to observe and potentially guide. On the observatory deck overlooking the city, Taeho Kim watched the proceedings via hologram with Jaiwoo parked beside him. "It's strange," said Jaiwoo. "A week ago, we feared they might destroy us. Now we're planning the future together." Taeho smiled as he watched humans and aliens beginning to work together below. "Not strange at all. Just the next step in our long journey." He looked up at the sky where stars were just becoming visible in the late afternoon. "And we have so much further to go."